Hello everyone, this is Mr. Brain Junkie here, and today we'll be talking about a science fiction action film called Sky Sharks. Be ready for some spoilers ahead. Somewhere inside the airspace of Russia, a commercial airline is carrying numerous passengers through the clouds behind the sunset, while the people are numbing themselves with ridiculous sources of entertainment. What's even worse, a Japanese man who looks like he came from Mortal Kombat is obviously having trouble containing his liquor while trying desperately to flirt with the airline hostess, but is only rejected by the lady for being an annoying insect. However, what the people don't realize is that their peaceful flight is quickly coming to an end, as the pilots continue flying the airplane through the clouds, but soon notices that numerous unidentified objects are following them closely behind. It's quickly revealed that the mysterious entities are actually a squad of humanoids riding on flying sharks, and the creatures eventually manage to surround the entire aircraft while shooting a missile directly onto the commercial plane. Very soon, the enemy manages to jump onto the aircraft's body and eventually cuts off the outer walls, while gaining access towards the inside of the plane. At the same time, the pilots are trying desperately to maneuver away, but is stunned by the monster that's flying towards them, which quickly kills the people as a result. This causes the airplane to shake violently while all the people are panicking in fear, but they are quickly stunned by a giant zombie soldier who begins killing all the humans without any mercy. Things become even worse when the flying sharks start to attack the commercial plane by using their jaws and killing the passengers horrifically, while the enemy's captain jumps onto the aircraft and shocking all the people with her zombified breasts. However, before the male passengers can overcome their conflicting arousals, they are quickly torn apart by the voluptuous enemy while the entire aircraft begins nose diving towards the ground. The female zombie sees this and quickly jumps out from the falling plane before the aircraft charges furiously towards its inevitable destruction. Sometimes later inside the city of New York, a woman called Angelique is driving her expensive sports car that was clearly paid by her sugar daddy as she heads directly towards the headquarters of Richter Technology. It's quickly revealed that the woman is actually the daughter of the company's owner called Richter, who's been keeping himself alive past his natural lifespan by using a serum that his company has developed. It turns out that the two have been alerted to the recent attack on the commercial airline owned by their company, and Richter has decided to send his team to investigate the incident. Surprisingly, they managed to find a suspicious warship near the crash site of the airplane, and the man decides to send his other daughter called Devour so she can go investigate this location even further alongside a local tour guide. What they don't realize is that an adventurous couple is already inside the giant warship while doing some intense bedtime exercises, but the boyfriend is quickly killed by a Nazi zombie from behind. Luckily, the woman manages to knock away the creature while shooting it by using her gun and giving her the chance to run outside, but she's quickly captured by more enemies who begins dragging her away on the floor as she screams in agony. The zombie soldier eventually brings the helpless woman into a large room and hands her upside down on top of a feeding tank, where numerous sharks jump out from the water and horrifically rips her into pieces. At the same time, Diablo manages to arrive towards the destination alongside her friend, and she's shocked to witness the massive size of the warship in front of her eyes. When the people eventually make it below the gigantic structure, Diablo decides to venture forwards all by herself, as she plans to secretly sneak inside the mysterious warship which may hold the answers to the recent attack. The woman carefully enters the massive vessel, and she's surprised to see the numerous military weapons from the Second World War, which suggests that the warship has been hidden in this location for a very long time. Very soon, Diablo eventually makes it behind a massive entrance, where she notices a shocking sight through the window as she sees the Nazi symbol accompanied by countless soldiers hanging on the ceiling. This causes her to transfer all the images back towards her father, but what she doesn't realize is that the soldiers are all slowly waking up as they are being injected with a mysterious liquid from their backs. Despite the obvious dangers, the woman decides to continue venturing forwards, but she's quickly attacked by the zombie soldiers from behind. Luckily, Diablo manages to quickly fight back as she knocks the enemies backwards while killing them on the ground, but what the woman doesn't realize is that even more zombie soldiers are coming back towards the secret base at the same time. The enemies quickly land onto the platform alongside their mutated sharks, while Diablo accidentally rushes inside the location as well, but she's quickly ambushed by the enemy captain who injects the woman with an unknown liquid. Surprisingly, the zombie soldier decides to spare the woman's life while giving her the chance to rush out from the warship as Diablo leaps out from the gigantic vessel and barely grabbing onto the nearby cliff. However, she quickly realized that even more flying sharks are heading towards the nearby cities, while the enemy's base has completely disappeared inside the icy ground. Sometimes later, Diablo has managed to return back to her father mostly unharmed, but she begins to suspect that Richter is somehow involved with the enemies, as the serums used by the Nazi soldiers were very similar to their own companies. What's even worse, Diablo soon begins feeling that something is very wrong with her body, as the compound injected inside her blood begins to mutate her physiology into something horrific. This causes the woman to scream in pain and forcing her to fall onto the floor with exhaustion. When Diablo eventually regains consciousness, she returns back to her father once again and demands to know the truth about the mysterious experiment, and the old man has no other choice but to finally reveal his involvement with the Nazi soldiers. It's quickly revealed that Richter used to work for Germany during the Second World War, and one of his colleagues known as Dr. Hans was responsible for pioneering a secret experimental project in an effort to defeat the Allies. The mad scientist believed that this was the only way for his country to win the war, as their troops have been continuously pushed back by the Allied forces. It turns out that Hans has developed a chemical known as K7B while working alongside Dr. Richter, and is capable of turning their soldiers into living monsters with incredible regenerative abilities and increased longevity. The serum can also be vaporized into the atmosphere for greater effect, which will quickly revive all the fallen soldiers in the battlefield, while turning them into additional infantries for the Nazi Empire. What's even worse, Dr. Hans has also designed an army of biomechanical sharks capable of flight, which will allow the German soldiers to destroy their opponent's air forces and eventually winning the war. However, what they didn't realize was how fast their armies were being defeated, and before the Nazi scientists managed to finish building the zombie soldiers, the Allied forces have already made it inside their country while bombing everything in sight. This gives Dr. Hans no other choice but to escape from Germany, but Richter refuses to abandon the country like a shameful deserter, and eventually ends up getting shot by his colleague in the chest. Luckily, the scientist managed to save himself by using the serum he invented, while Dr. Hans continues trying to escape from the city alongside the other deserters as they unleash their weapons upon anyone who stands in their way. Sometimes later, the Allied forces eventually manage to win the Second World War and begins punishing the Nazi members for their crimes against humanity. However, instead of being persecuted like his other colleagues, Richter revealed his secret experiments to his captors in exchange for a clean slate, and used his knowledge to create one of the largest technology companies in the world. Realizing that their father used to be a war criminal, the sisters are greatly disgusted by their family's dark past, but what they don't realize is that the fruits of Richter's creation has already started attacking all the other countries. This causes tremendous chaos across the globe, as all the people are being massacred by the undead soldiers and their horrific flying sharks, while the military is forced to fight back as well. Despite the tremendous efforts from the militaries around the world, the humans are unable to neutralize the enemies due to the cloaking ability of the flying sharks. With no other choice, Richter decides to work alongside his daughters while contacting all his military associates from different countries and hoping that they can somehow conjure up a plan to defeat the horrific enemies. However, the old man only manages to discover even more bad news from his allies across the globe, as their military forces are completely outmatched by the mutated Nazi armies. What's even worse, the enemy still has a breeding program where even more flying sharks can be produced alongside the zombie soldiers, which means that they must stop the Nazi monsters right away. Luckily, before all hope can dissipate, the Japanese scientists are able to come up with a plan and suggest that they use a high-energy sonar pulse to disable the sharks' invisibility. However, this plan also requires that they stop all flights worldwide while using another civilian aircraft as bait near the enemy's headquarters so they can lure out the remaining monster sharks. Very soon, the military squadron manages to acquire the sonar weapon from the Japanese scientists, while Richter gives Angelique a suppressant for the Nazi serum in case Diablo is overtaken by the mutating compounds inside her body. At the same time, inside an unsuspecting airport, the people are all waiting impatiently due to their flights being cancelled in the last moment. moment, while no one seems to be worried about the horrific shark monsters that are destroying their city. Surprisingly, before the people can figure out what to do next, they quickly notice that their flight has been magically reinstated. This causes them to all begin boarding the aircraft like they just won the jackpot, not realizing that they are destined to become human sandwiches for the monster sharks. Very soon, the plane begins to take off like a giant flying lunchbox, while the Nazi zombies are launching out from their base and quickly turning invisible to hunt down the unsuspecting humans. The military commander sees this and quickly launches their aircraft towards the enemy's direction as well, while the soldiers are getting ready for the fight of their lives, but Diabla is clearly being affected by the serum inside her body. At the same time, the commercial airplane continues flying across the night sky while the people are oblivious to the incoming danger. Things become even more outrageous as two naughty passengers secretly sneak inside the aircraft's restroom to do some aggressive bedtime exercises while entertaining the entire cabin with their high-pitched vocals. What the people don't realize is that the flying sharks are already here and quickly begin surrounding the entire aircraft with great numbers. The passengers eventually notice that something is wrong as they all stare outside of their windows in shock, only to see that the monsters are hovering over them like predators. Very soon, the Nazi zombies manage to land onto the commercial airplane and quickly begins taking out their tools to cut open the walls from the outside. This causes the aircraft to shake violently while all the passengers begin panicking in fear, but things only become worse as even more Nazi zombies land onto the airplane while killing the commercial pilots horrifically and petrifying the humans with their gorgeous smiles. What's even more, the Nazi zombies eventually decides to shoot a giant metal chain that penetrates the aircraft's body while catching it on the other side to create a massive chainsaw in the process. This causes the people to watch in horror as the Nazi zombies prepare to deliver a gruesome death to everyone inside the plane. Very soon, the enemy turns on their terrible weapon as the entire aircraft is shred into pieces while cutting the people inside into nothing but human sashimis. Surprisingly, the Nazi zombies eventually stop before killing the rest of the passengers and deciding to personally eliminate the survivors by barbecuing the people into human steaks. At the same time, Richter's team has finally arrived into the vicinity, but quickly realize that they are too late to save the passengers inside. This gives them no other choice but to fire their sonar weapon, which causes a huge shockwave in the process, while quickly ripping open the nearby aircraft and dropping the plane directly towards the ground. However, it's quickly revealed that the weapon was ineffective against the shark monsters, as the creatures have mutated far more than they expected. Realizing that their plans have apparently failed, Angelique quickly contacts her father to tell him the bad news, but Richter seems to have already predicted this outcome as he finally reveals his secret weapon by maneuvering a gigantic battleship towards the vicinity. It turns out that the old scientist has been working on something else behind everyone, and it all started when the US government invaded Vietnam during the 1960s. Due to the difficulties in winning the war on foreign lands, the US government decided to develop a super soldier program of their own, where fallen comrades can be revived by the K-7B and controlled remotely by military personnel. The Americans began their experiments by executing numerous enemy soldiers on the spot, before spraying the deceased with a form of the Nazi serum and hoping that they would attack the Vietnamese military base. Very soon, the corpses began mutating violently and transforming the dead people into zombies, but instead of targeting the enemy's base, the vile creatures started attacking the American military instead, while causing tremendous damage in the process. This forces the American soldiers to fight back immediately with all their fire powers, but they are clearly outmatched by the undead monsters as the enemies are nearly indestructible. Realizing that they are losing the battle, the scientists decided to unleash their newest super soldier called Damien, who is being controlled remotely by the US military. Very soon, the super zombie begins charging towards the battlefield and eventually manages to break into the fences like the raging Hulk. However, what the people didn't realize was that the adrenaline from Damien's human host has created a malfunction in the system, which prompted the creature to rip out the receiver from its head as a result. This caused the super zombie to begin attacking both the allies and the enemies at the same time, which ended up killing everyone inside the battlefield and creating massive amounts of casualties for the American military. Luckily, the tragic incident also allowed Richter to finally figure out how to control future subjects using nanotechnology, and the old scientist is planning to unleash his most powerful bioweapon while controlling the creature all by himself. Very soon, Richter Richter begins connecting his brain by using an implanted chip and establishing a network with a massive creature, while all the weapons equipped on the giant monster are being calibrated for the incoming battle. However, what he doesn't realize is that Diabla has been completely transformed by the Nazi serum, which causes her to betray her comrades by opening their aircraft's door for the incoming enemies. This allows the Nazi zombies to jump on board immediately, while the soldiers try desperately to fight off the undead enemies, but the humans are clearly no match for the mutated monsters as they are quickly defeated in the process. Things become even worse as Diabla has completely turned towards the enemy's side and eventually points her pistol towards her sister. Luckily, Angelique manages to knock away the woman before quickly injecting the antidote inside her sister's neck and allowing the suppressant to finally overcome the serum inside Diabla's body as she eventually manages to revert back to normal. However, the battle is clearly not over yet as the flying sharks continue attacking the people from the outside, but just before the final blow can be dealt towards the aircraft, a massive shark monster bites onto the enemy from behind. It's quickly revealed that this terrifying creature is actually being controlled by Richter himself as he immediately turns the tide of the battle while chasing the enemies furiously. This eventually allows him to destroy many of the flying sharks and knocking them out from the sky, but numerous enemies are still chasing behind his daughter's aircraft while trying to push the plane away from its course. Richter sees this and tries to lure the enemies away from his children while charging furiously towards the flying sharks and tearing them into pieces, but the Nazi soldiers quickly retaliate by shooting numerous missiles towards Richter's shark. Luckily, this eventually allows the old man to lock onto the flying enemies while unloading his bombs towards the Nazi monsters and completely incinerating the creatures in the process. Very soon, the old scientist manages to destroy all the flying sharks inside the vicinity while causing the creatures to drop from the sky like it's raining sushi. This causes the people to celebrate in victory as they have miraculously defeated the undead enemies against tremendous odds, while somehow still managing to keep their lives. However, Richter still feels guilty for his past crimes against humanity while planning to apologize to his children once again, but only to see that the girls have forgiven their father a long time ago. This causes the old man to be filled with happiness as he finally decides to retire from the company while looking peacefully into the city. What the people don't realize is that the war against the Nazi is far from being over, as one of Richter's colleagues was actually the mastermind behind the enemy's resurgence. What's even worse, there are countless more zombie soldiers being created as they all plan on attacking humanity in the near future. So what do you guys think about this movie? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like my videos, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.